Is Christmas cancelled? Well, what a year it's been, and it's become a cliche, but it's true. None of us could have possibly imagined this time last Christmas the challenges and the disappointments that this year would bring. And I'm sure all of us were hoping to bid 2020 a fond farewell on a positive note, with the hope of a vaccine and the chance of some escapism from anything COVID related, by just enjoying a few days celebrating Christmas with families and loved ones. Unfortunately, much of that hope has changed in the last few days with the news of a rapidly spreading variant of coronavirus in the UK, and the governments across the regions responding to it by imposing some of the most draconian social restrictions that we've seen since the first lockdown in spring. And for many of us, it seems like Christmas has been cancelled right when we were about to enjoy it, and right when we felt we needed it more than ever. My family's had to drastically rearrange its Christmas plans, but I know that millions of people across Europe have been affected far worse than we have. Many can no longer even get home to see their loved ones, and many will be spending their first Christmas day alone. And my heart goes out to everyone who's had their plans dashed at the 11th hour. And yet, in the midst of these kinds of circumstances, perhaps the real Christmas story is more relevant and on the agenda than ever. Because the circumstances around the first Christmas wasn't the magical, sentimentalized, relational utopia that's typical of most Christmas movies or marketing campaigns. It was actually one of dark and difficult days. Days where the government was interrupting people's best laid plans. When a teenage mother was navigating the final days of her first pregnancy without healthcare support and having to give birth in an occupied animal shelter with only her completely inexperienced new husband by her side. It was anything but a silent night where all is calm and all is bright. Far from the festive utopia we've all come to expect of Christmas, the true Christmas story is a story of a broken and a fragile world. And yet, rather than Christmas be a story of momentary escapism from the difficult reality of the world, the true Christmas story is of a God stepping into that world and becoming part of it. And in doing so, communicating that the sufferings and the brokenness of this world matter to Him, that the tears and the disappointments of our lives is not one that God wants to socially distance Himself from, but fully embrace. And yet, even in doing so, God's not simply empathizing with us, but in doing so, promising real and lasting hope beyond the brokenness of this world. There's a line in one of my favorite Christmas carols that says this: "A thrill of hope, a weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn." And I think if there's one experience that each of us enters this Christmas with, it's weariness. The last 9 months have taken its toll, and many of us are simply weary. And if there's one thing this year that a weary and an anxious world is searching for, it's hope. True and solid hope that the circumstances of this world cannot take away. And yet that's what the Christmas story is all about: the arrival of unshakable hope. As my Solus colleague Gavin Matthews recently wrote in the Scotsman newspaper, he said, "The Christian hope is not that we will be borne away from the harsh realities on angelic wings of distraction, nostalgia, and entertainment, but that we will be joined here on earth by a God who will embrace both it and us and begin to remake this world again." The Christian story is refreshingly real about the darkness of our world, the darkness even in our own hearts. But it doesn't leave us there. It's a story about remaking and transformation. So many of the Christmas stories that we love are stories of personal transformation, be it Ebenezer Scrooge or George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. The stories we love at this time are about new life, where individuals are awakened to the darkness in their own lives and transformed to live in the light of the reality that they're shown. And interestingly, in many of these stories, the light that they most need is found in the most unlikely of places. Light not sourced through introspection, but through having their lives interrupted by a source of illumination that comes from outside their world, a transcendental interference. That's what Lewis said was going on in the Christmas story. Jesus Christ, whom Lewis called the transcendental interferer, was breaking into our world to expose its darkness and yet at the same time offer light and life to anyone who would embrace him. So is Christmas cancelled? Well, it depends on what you think the essence of Christmas really is. If Christmas is ultimately about the gatherings, the tinsel, the red Starbucks cups, the escapism, or walking in our winter wonderland, then yes, this Christmas has certainly been hijacked by fear and disappointment and a winter of discontent. But if, in losing those Christmas trimmings, this Christmas is stripped back to allow us to see the things that really matter, like hope and transformation, and the unique provision for those things that are paradoxically found in a baby lying in a manger, then perhaps Christmas isn't cancelled. Perhaps Christmas, in the truest sense of the term, is more on the agenda this year than ever before. And there's a real possibility that this year, even through our disappointments, a weary 2020 world can experience the thrill of true hope. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from everyone at the Solus team.